induction will highlight the process of hazard identification, security procedures, emergency response, and general processes in our workplace. Umgeni Water presents the Health, Safety, Environment and Quality Induction Program. Welcome to Nagel. Nagel is a package plant and a dam that produces 84 cubic meters per day. The site is a major hazard installation site because of the quantity of hazardous chlorine gas that is stored on site. Site emergency and evacuation protocols. Upon hearing the alarm or following notification by the emergency response team or emergency coordinator to evacuate the building or premises, do not panic. Take note of the emergency exits and signage. Proceed to the assembly point quickly for all emergencies. The hazardous chemical on site is chlorine. If there's a chlorine leak, then the staff must proceed swiftly in the direction to the assembly point away from the wind. The siren will be sounded should there be an emergency on site. One long continuous ring. The siren will be tested on Friday at 8 a.m. and there will be one ring for 30 seconds. At the assembly point, gather with other individuals. The evacuation controller or coordinators will take roll call to identify any missing persons. All employees to remain at the assembly point. Do not re-enter the building until further instructions are given by the emergency coordinator. Company Shake Policy Statement and Procedures. All UW Shake procedures and policies should be adhered to by all employees and contractors. Security Access Control. Security will conduct searching and checks of vehicles on a daily basis upon entry and exit the sites. Security will request the names of all personnel entering the works or plant for record purposes. All personnel will be subjected to breathalyzer procedure on the day of testing or as per site procedure. Declaration of laptops and equipment to be conducted. To gain access to site, one will be subjected to screening and declaration prior given access to site. Personnel accessing site will be sanitized at the point of entry at the gate, according to COVID-19 protocols. Ensure that no loitering is allowed at the guardhouse. No Umgeni Water employees, friends or family members are allowed in the guardhouse. Ensure that all contractors are identified as inducted with identification as issued to you in order to ensure proper contractor control. Persons not identified as having been site inducted or authorized to undertake work at the site shall not be permitted entry until verified. On exit, the access permit must be handed over to the security office until verified. Goods removal permit. No equipment is to be taken off the site that does not belong to the contractor without a removals permit. The removals permit book is to be obtained from the security staff or the senior process controller on shift in the control room. The removals permit must be signed by either the works superintendent, SSHEQ coordinator of the senior process controller on shift. Firearm control. This synopsis is subject to and must be read in conjunction with Firearms Control Act 60 of 2000 and specific site operating procedures. All Umgeni Water employees and visitors in possession of a firearm will not be allowed access unless the firearm is handed in for safekeeping. The owner of the firearm will be directed to the firearm safety area where he or she will be required to make the firearm safe. The firearm is to be pointed into the provided discharging cabinet when making safe. Alcohol and drug use consumption. Employees and visitors who are under the influence of alcohol or prohibited substance shall be prohibited from entering Umgeni Water sites, drive vehicles, operate any machinery, maintain or repair vehicles, or perform any duty. Should there be a positive case, security will inform the site superintendent or SHEC coordinator to report the matter. Umgeni Water recognizes that substance and alcohol abuse is an illness to which some people are more prone than others, and as such, the organization undertakes to assist affected employees. Smoking policy. The organization shall be entirely smoke-free, except for designated areas, in order to protect and enhance our indoor air quality and to contribute to the health and well-being of all employees. Smoking is prohibited in all of the enclosed areas within the work sites without exception. This includes common work areas, boardrooms, private offices, hallways, canteens, stairs, restrooms, and pool vehicles. The only designated smoking area is outdoors, and appropriate signage will be displayed at the workplaces which will indicate to employees and visitors the designated smoking areas. Employee responsibility for H&S. The Occupational Health and Safety Act, Section 14 prescribes that all employees take all reasonable care for the health and safety of himself or herself and other persons who may be affected by his acts or omissions. Cooperate with the employer to ensure compliance with the OHS Act, Act 85 of 1993. Carry out any lawful order given to him and obey the health and safety rules and procedures set out by the employer or authorized person. Report any incident which might affect the safety of personnel to the employer or SHE representative no later than the end of the shift. Parking. Security to ensure that all visitors park their vehicles in the visitor parking spaces provided. Reporting of visitors and contractors. All contractors and visitors to be directed to the control room when they arrive at site so the necessary SHE documentation can be filled in, for example, work permit, induction, etc. Safety induction, Contractor Management 37.2 Agreement. Letter of Good Standing, Rules of Contractor, Contractor Safety Management Requirements, Rules of Contractors on Site. All contractors doing work at Umgeni Water shall ensure that 37.2 Agreement, Letter of Good Standing and Rules of Contractors, SHE induction and other applicable documents aligned to project are vetted by the SHEC department. Site legal appointees, first aider, firefighters, emergency coordinators, SHEC representatives. Legal appointments in health and safety are very important because the OHS Act and its regulations requires first aider, firefighters, emergency coordinators, incident investigator, health and safety committee and SHEC representatives appointments to be made in the interest of health and safety. This means failure to have these appointments automatically means non-compliance with the Act, which immediately places the employer at fault. Although the Act places overall responsibility on the employer for health and safety, an employer cannot perform all these functions solely, so the appointment of certain persons working within an appointment structure allows these functions to be covered. Work permits and lockouts. Maintenance or any contractual work must not be undertaken without a valid permit issued by Umgeni Water official. Ensure that the permit is valid for the intended job, for example, welding, lockout, hot works, working at heights and confined spaces entry. No one is allowed to do welding, lockout, enter into confined space without a work permit as prescribed in our work permit procedure. Equipment and energy sources must be engineered with lockout facilities where the lock can be placed, making it tamper-proof. You must be in possession of a personal lock and key for the safe locking out of energy sources and machinery. No person shall set a machine in motion or work on any machine unless he has taken all reasonable precaution to ensure that setting the machine in motion cannot injure the person or others. Firefighting equipment. Do not place obstacles under or near the firefighting equipment that will hinder you in getting to the firefighting equipment quickly. Know where your nearest firefighting equipment can be located and know how to use the fire extinguisher. It's important that the correct firefighting equipment is used to extinguish the various types of fires. Do not tamper with the firefighting equipment and report any defects to your SHE representative. First aid equipment. Report all injuries, no matter how small, to your safety representative, first aider and supervisor by the end of the shift. Obtain first aid treatment for all injuries from a trained first aider and ensure that the incident register is completed. Only stock medical supplies that are listed in the General Safety Regulations. Personal protective equipment. Umgeni Water will provide all employees free of charge with all the necessary personal protective equipment to enable you to safely fulfill your duties. Where personal protective equipment has been issued, it must be worn where required. Personal protective equipment will be replaced on a fair wear and tear basis. For the safety of all personnel, the following PPE is required when working on site but not limited to: earplugs or muffs, gloves, goggles, respirators FFP2, risk of HBA, hazardous biological agents, full face masks, dust masks, safety shoes with steel toe cap, overalls, long sleeves, face shields, visors, waders, coveralls, reflector vests, safety signs and color coding, for example, sampling taps and those suitable for drinking. All color coding of pipeline and machinery within Umgeni Water will comply with the SHE color coding standard or guideline for pipelines and the plant. Reporting of accidents and incidents. All incidents and accidents must be reported immediately on site before the end of the shift or 24 hours, who will then notify the superintendent. All incidents shall be logged onto the SAP system. Eating and refreshment areas. All eating facilities should be kept clean at all times. Toilet and ablutions. Toilet and ablution facilities are provided at all our sites for employees and visitors and are marked with the relevant signage on the doors. Hygiene. Good personal hygiene needs to be practiced by at all times. Employees and contractor should ensure that they wash their hands with water and soap, sanitizing of hands with a 70% alcohol-based sanitizer using the 20 seconds method. 2-meter social distancing to be maintained at all times. Everyone gaining access to sites will be subjected to screening and declaration. Task risk assessment. All employees and contractors need to do a task risk assessment before the commencement of work so that they are aware of hazards, so they can let their supervisor know when the scope of work changes. It's important that you identify all hazards to workers, even if they seem obvious, so that measures can be put in place to minimize the hazard. Common hazards and risks. Common hazards and risks that are at the site include dust, gases, fumes and vapors, water depth, engines and motors, hazardous suppliers and materials, flammables, etc., electrical conductors, machinery, pressurized equipment, manual handling, building and structures, elevated work areas, hand tools, tripping or falling, working at heights, driven machinery, filters, pulsators, raw water canal, handling and storage of hazardous chemicals, construction work, electricity, confined space entry, thermal stress, heat stroke in and outdoors, noise zones or environmental noise, ventilation, asbestos, lighting, hazardous biological agents, ergonomics, housekeeping. Good housekeeping means having a place for everything and everything in its place. Do not leave tools, equipment and pallets lying or standing in areas demarcated as aisles and walkways. Do not place equipment or material in front of emergency exits, fire equipment, distribution boards and first aid boxes. Maintain a clean and tidy workplace, which is a reflection of your commitment to your work area. Handling hazardous chemical substances and the law. When handling hazardous chemical substances, please ensure compliance to the hazardous chemical substance regulations by ensuring that you are aware of the SDS of the chemical, you wear the appropriate PPE for the chemical exposure, and chemicals should be stored in a well-ventilated area with adequate bunds. Signage should be displayed and ensure adequate firefighting equipment. Safe use of hand and portable tools. Always use the correct tools for the intended job. All hand tools to be recorded on a checklist. Never use homemade tools at work and never use broken tools to complete a job. Always store tools in the correct place. Report damaged tools to the safety representative. Manual handling and lifting. Do not lift objects that are heavy and awkward to lift on your own. Get the required help. Always ensure that you get as close as possible to the object and bend down on your haunches, still keeping your legs slightly apart and ensuring that the back is straight. Ensure at all times that you are well balanced and in control of the lift. Driven machinery operators, legal requirements. No user may use or permit the use of a lifting machine or hand-powered lifting device unless A. It has been designed and constructed in accordance with a general accepted technical standard. Waste management and the law. You must assist in ensuring that waste generated is minimized by following specific corporate strategy which apply to your work areas. You must adhere to the procedures which ensure that all waste is removed under permit conditions and that a registered contractor issues a permit for the waste removed and disposed. Always adhere to the National Environmental Management Waste Act, NEMWA. Exposure, noise zones and hearing conservation, occupational hygiene stresses and their health effects. Agents which pose health hazards in the work environment include airborne contaminants, non-airborne chemicals, physical agents such as heat and noise, biological agents, ergonomic factors such as inadequate lifting procedures and work postures, and psychosocial stresses. Exposure, handling and disposal of asbestos. All sites to undertake asbestos surveys and testing of asbestos-containing material and ensure that asbestos is labeled at site and left undisturbed to minimize exposure. Ensure removal is performed by certified asbestos-approved inspection authority. Use proper removal and safety techniques to ensure that asbestos is not crushed, broken, abraded, or otherwise may release fibers, and that the correct PPE is worn. Exposure to hazardous biological agents. HBA are defined as living things that have the capacity to cause unwanted hermit, can include microorganisms such as pathogens, cells, cell cultures, and human endoparasites that have the potential to provoke an infection toxic effects. Major hazard installation and the law. Most UW sites are major hazardous installation because of the harmful chlorine chemical that is stored on site. An employer, self-employed person and user shall, after consultation with the relevant health and safety representative or relevant health and safety committee, carry out a risk assessment at intervals not exceeding 5 years. and submit such a risk assessment to the Chief Inspector, relevant government and provincial director. Declaration of pregnant breastfeeding medication. Personnel taking medication that might affect the work performance need to declare to his or her line manager, as this can pose potential harm to the person and others. Females that might be pregnant must declare to line manager so that they can be removed from any risk areas that might cause potential injury or harm. Females breastfeeding must declare to line manager so that they can be removed from any risk areas that might cause potential injury or harm or contamination. We hope this induction has offered guidance on procedures and precautions to follow in order to maintain a sustainable, healthy, and safe working environment. This induction will highlight the process of hazard identification, security procedures, emergency response, and general processes in our workplace. Umgeni Water presents the Health, Safety, Environment and Quality Induction Program.